Cool. Well, thank you for joining my session. I'm excited to talk to you guys about using RPGs to target learning outcomes. So I know you said you're familiar with RPGs since you're planning to use it next course, so hopefully we can kind of talk and discuss about different ways. We kind of have a smaller group, so we'll have a bit more time for discussion. The goal of the presentation today is to hopefully help you think about ways to apply some of the strategies that I talk about, some of the strategies I've used in Worlds XP. This is a prototype that we're working on, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But just really quick, I'm Dustin. I was just up until this last September in Taiwan for 3 years. I taught university students English as a second language, and then international students academic writing. And I gamified my course, one of my courses there, as well as did some game-based learning, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Can you tell me your favorite game right now?
I just started, so this is one of my favorite games ever, but I just introduced the game Diplomacy, if anyone knows it, to my class. They're all divided up into countries, and they, even before the first term started, they were, out in the main room, just like diabolically scheming, and it's gone just as well as I could have hoped.
Yeah, Diplomacy is a great one. We play a bit online with some friends.
Yeah, I think that'll help.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
You get 10 experience points.
Nice. How much for a level?
100, usually my class, but it's up to you to decide how many. How about you? Favorite game recently?
Like video game?
Any game, yeah.
Any game.
Any game.
So like right now I don't play many games, but my favorite game was Halo on Xbox.
Okay.
Nice.
Halo is a great one, yeah. A lot of couch co-op or a lot of the LAN party games.
Oh my goodness.
That's experience
Split screen.
Yeah.
So good.
And this is my wife, Grace. We'll hear more from her, or about her, I guess.
My favorite right now is probably Terraforming Mars. It's a board game about making Mars, livable.
10 XP for you too. How about John? Do you have a current favorite?
My current favorite game, I recommend every time I get a chance, is Between Two Cities.
Between Two Cities. I've heard that's a good one.
It's a
I've
lot
been
of
wanting
fun.
to try it. 10 XP for you too. All right. So that's something I do in as a part of the World's XP kit. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but that's not really the focus of today. These XP is just something I wanted to show you, that a way to kind of reinforce behavior you want to see in your classroom. You don't really have to necessarily stop class, or you can kind of just hand them the XP for sharing. Today, the presentation is broken up into 3 main parts. The first part, I want to give you a bit of a context of who I am as a game-based and gamification educator. And we're going to go on a quick journey about where I started teaching and how I got to Worlds XP. And then I'm going to share a bit about Worlds XP. But we're really going to look at this today, the integrated learning adventures, and how we can use those in our classes to gamify instruction. So game-based learning and gamification. Does anyone want to take a stab at the differences between these two? Game-based learning, gamification. I know she knows because she heard me present already. Yeah.
So would game-based learning be using games in class for learning outcomes, and gamification is using game mechanics and principles in kind of like the overarching course?
Perfect. Yeah, that's good. So game-based learning is using game to play or to learn through play. Gamification is, there's a lot of different definitions, but the main one is using game-like mechanics in a non-game setting. So like in a classroom. So the first time I kind of explored gamification, I was a first-year teacher in South Korea, and I was struggling with one class to have a positive class culture. There was a lot of talking out of turn, a lot of getting out of your seat that disrespectful in some regards too. So I was really wrecking my brain to how can I kind of reset class and get them to focus in the lesson, listen to me as a teacher. And so I turned to some superheroes. The Avengers were really popular at the time when I was in Korea. This was 2012. And the academy that I worked at used a red star, blue star system, right? You receive a blue star on the board next to your name if that's positive reinforcement, a red star next to your name if you're doing something in class as negative reinforcement. For example, maybe getting out of your seat, talking out of turn. So what I did is I used that system we were already using, and I printed out some Avengers. So I'd place one Avenger on the left side of the board, and I would have students split up into groups. And each group chose their Avenger. So you had every group's Avenger on the left side of the board, and you had Loki on the right side of the board. So Loki was, at that time, was a definitive bad guy, right? He kind of does some good things later in the series, but at that time he was a really bad guy. And Spider-Man was not an Avenger yet. My wife helped me print these, and
You just said
she
printed
forgot.
Avengers.
But we had different Avengers, and then what I did, we're gonna just say this is the leftover Avenger that they did not choose, was myself, and I played the game as well. So throughout class, if a student in their group answered their question, their Avenger would move across the board. So they would compete in groups to reach Loki, to fight Loki, to earn bonus stars. Now if they were doing something in class they didn't want them to do, or some behavior I wanted to reduce in class, instead of moving their superhero back, my superhero would move across the board. So of course they didn't want the teacher to be able to fight Loki. They wanted their superhero to get across. So this was my first time using gamification. Looking back, there's some things I might have changed. I might have actually printed myself with a superhero cape. I think it would have been a lot of fun. Also, I would have liked to have some sort of mini game when they fight Loki at the end. So it could have been something as simple as crumple up a piece of paper, throw it at the board. If it hits the bullseye, you defeat Loki. Or it could be some sort of informal assessment, like answering a question based on whatever content we're covering in class. So that was my first experience with gamification. I also started doing some sort of game-based learning. If you search Google right now and look up ESL games or ESL lessons with games, these are what will come up. And I used some of these games in my first year of teaching, but what I quickly realized is they're not the most efficient, not the most effective way. One thing we can look at, for example, Pictionary. If you have a student drawing something, they're not really focusing on what the meaning of the word means. They just have the word and then they draw it, and then you have everyone guessing one word. So you're really only helping students understand that one vocabulary word. We're not really approaching the lesson from a more broader way. Another one, roll and move. This one is less effective because sometimes it's not very engaging. Again, these can be used successfully. For example, we were talking yesterday, and I think roll and move is great for conversation starters with less eager students, maybe. You just want to get them talking about something. So I wanted to look at game-based learning and gamification and kind of really look at the effectiveness of it and look at different modern board game mechanics and how to use those in class and how to modify different board games to make them more approachable for the classroom. So that's when I started Board Game with Education. It's a podcast and now a community. We are starting here in Los Angeles. We had a pretty strong community in Taiwan before we moved and did language exchange events through board games. Originally it's Board Gaming with English, and if you listen to the first couple of seasons, you'll notice the episode content is very slow for English learners. The original idea was to provide episodes for English learners to have the tools needed to play a specific board game. So we would go over the how to play the board game. We would talk about grammar structures you might encounter in English when you play, go over vocabulary, and there would also be an activity they could do to check for their comprehension. But what we noticed is a lot of educators outside of English language were interested in this idea, and that's when we started reaching out to a broader educational community. And I realized this was a great way to kind of bring these ideas to other educators and other teachers. So the first thing I wanted to do early on in Board Game with Education is gamify an entire course, because I was using a lot of game-based learning and individual lessons and targeting outcomes, but I wanted to see how gamifying my course might affect student engagement. So I started doing a bit of research, and I found a lot of great resources, a lot of great experiences from other teachers. There was something missing, and that's where I got the idea for Worlds XP. We'll talk about that in about a minute or two, but I want to share with you some of the resources I found. I think maybe some of you know Jonathan Cassie. I found his book and also his podcast with Tracy as well. That was one resource for gamifying a course. Another great Educator Well Played podcast, and his book Explore Like a Pirate. It's Michael Matera. He really looks at the basics of gamifying your course and breaks it down through his experience. Professor Game Podcast. This is a really great podcast that interviews different experts in the field of gamification or game-based learning. There are some corporate gamification topics on there, but they do have a lot of educational topics as well. And Yu-Kai Cho, this is someone we'll hear from in a minute. He is kind of his central idea is the inspiration for Worlds XP. And he has Octalysis, which is his classification of all the gamification that you might come across. And then the Multiplayer Classroom by Lee Sheldon. He gamified his game design course, a university level game design course. So hearing from all of these experts, the first thing that I realized I needed to do is come up with a theme to gamify my course. And so I chose Sherlock Holmes. I chose this because a lot of my students were familiar with him, the literary figure, and I also found a game that I could use and extrapolate across the entire semester, and that's Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. So that in that game you basically form detective groups and you're competing against Sherlock Holmes to solve the crime. And in the course they were throughout the course of the semester, they were solving the crime. So each week, they might have an opportunity to earn one extra clue. So this was also great because it worked on reading comprehension as well as teamwork, a lot of other skills they developed. So there was game-based learning involved in the activity of solving the crime, but it was also gamified course through knowledge points. Instead of experience points, they earned knowledge points. And those knowledge points allowed them to unlock different parts of the game. But I can share more about this experience if you have any questions after. I just wanted to share that with you to kind of show where I went from gamifying this course to Worlds XP, which is what we're going to focus on now. So when we first used this, when I say we, I mean my wife and I, because she was super helpful, and the direction of Worlds XP. She did a lot of the graphic design. She also is a really great person to talk to about challenges. And when we first used it, it didn't have a name. It was just called the Gamification Kit. I was Worlds XP. I visited her class once a week, and we implemented different ideas. We had an overall structure of the course where students would create characters, they would earn XP, they would have different achievements they could do by writing a certain number of words in the writing log, read a certain number of pages. They could earn items that would unlock rewards, and they would take on responsibilities as they would level up in their classroom. So after doing it that year, well, before I get there, we do have 4 podcast episodes where we talk about how we implemented it, some challenges and some successes. And it's really great because we talk about it in real time. So we record the first episode after the first day of implementing it, the second episode after a couple weeks, the third episode midway through the quarter, and then the last episode at the end of the quarter. So we really are pretty honest and authentic about what's going on in our process. So from there we moved into creating Worlds XP, which is something I wanted to design as a toolkit for teachers, something that has the physical components to get started, the cards, extra resources, these stories, all of that put together for teachers. I also wanted to make it interchangeable, so to work in various disciplines or ages. And one thing I wanted to really focus on is this quote by Yu-Kai Cho. He says, "Gamification, simply put, is human-focused design." I think this quote is really awesome, and it struck me when I first read it, because we can just change one word and put student-focused design. I think as we gamify our courses, we can really focus on the experience of the student, the engagement of the student, the learning outcomes of the student. And that's kind of how I started with the focus of Worlds XP. And there are 3 main things I really wanted to make sure Worlds XP provided, and that was class culture, so creating a positive class culture through RPGs, and that's creating peer-to-peer relationships and teacher-to-student relationships as well. Increase engagement and motivation through the gamified learning of the RPGs. Again, they feel a sense of ownership in their classroom by taking on responsibilities. There's a sense of community through character development. And then also reinforce positive behavior. If you're familiar with any classroom management systems like Classcraft and ClassDojo, where students are in XP to encourage behavior or interactions you want to see in your classroom. So this is the overview of Worlds XP. We're going to look at just a couple of the main things, and then we're going to get into the integrated learning adventures, and then we're going to play one, and then think about how to integrate one in a learning setting ourselves. So we have, these are unique characters from Worlds XP. Jenna Ivy is the artist that drew these. The prototype is a print and play that I have. So there are some stock art, but we do have a few characters that are the unique art. We have like an ogre, a girl with a kind of a rat parrot type thing that talks maybe, a parrot dinosaur, and a kind of captain turtle. So do we want to choose one to play as today?
Captain Turtle.
Captain Turtle, okay. He's the one that sticks out on the card. So that's one of the first things your students will do using Worlds XP is they'll create or choose a character. So I wanted to give them a starting point with their creativity, some characters to choose from. Then we kind of develop our character. Just some basic information, things that you might have done if you played RPGs before. So we need a name. Does anybody have a name? Or we can come back to a name. I think that's sometimes the hardest to think of. How about a strength or weakness of our Captain Turtle?
Do you have examples you would give the kids?
We do, yeah. I have I didn't put it here. We have a example. Maybe I can actually pull it up.
Like amazing at math but stinks at spelling? Is that what you had in mind?
Or like high defense, low speed.
Yeah, it could be either. Like maybe he's very hard because he's a turtle. He has a shell, right? It's kind of up to you as the teacher to decide how creative you want to allow students, what kind of creative freedom. If you provide the example, right, they're going to kind of model that example. I do have one, but it's on a different PowerPoint. So do we have a strength we want to go with?
Well, that's not very creative.
I think it's pretty creative because it's the...
He's slow to learn new things, but when he gets them, he has a good memory because he's rock solid.
Okay, cool. So
That's
slow learner, strong memory.
yeah.
Okay, that might help us in our adventure. How about a weakness?
I think slow learners. are
Slow
weaknesses.
learners.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
So the strength is he has a good memory. The weakness is slow learner. Any like particular clothing he has? A shell?
Yeah, the pirate hat's pretty cool.
Shell, pirate hat,
Sword, maybe.
sword, okay. Maybe that's the accessory, the sword?
Accessory, yeah.
Did he have the
Spyglass.
spyglass?
The spyglass too? Okay, so we got sword, spyglass, the shell, and the hat. Yeah, let's remember the board's over there, so maybe I'll go write it down.
Do you want to?
Yeah, do you want to write it down? Yeah, she'll write the strength, weakness, clothing, accessory, and then we have where he's from. I think they're right up
Oh.
there. Where is he from?
The island of Tortuga.
Island of Tortuga. There's a board game called Tortuga something. 1776 or something. Yeah.
I think so.
Cool. So Island of Tortuga. This is previous relationships. That's something that they develop with other students in the class. They pair up with another student, decide how they know each other as characters. So we'll skip that for today. And then personality. What kind of turtle is he?
Spunky.
Spunky. Okay. Spunky personality. And does he have any beliefs? Something that he really believes in? A reason to live for the turtle?
I forgot what's the myth with the turtle as an island? Like the whole world's just an island on top of a turtle's back or something.
A turtle-centric worldview.
Yeah.
Okay, turtle centric.
Not even flat Earth. It's turtle centric.
It's not funny. Cool. All right, and then a job that he had
He worked at Walmart.
at Walmart. I did say he was a captain, but we can definitely play with that if we don't want to make him a captain.
Like his job currently or the job he had before?
It could be either or. We'll do currently something that like he's doing.
Side job.
Side job.
Drives Uber.
Drive Uber.
Uber driver. Okay.
Classic.
We'll do like a turtle Uber driver or something. Okay.
Pilots a ship.
Yeah.
The car.
Yeah. Perfect. And now do we have a name? Now that we know a little bit about him?
Rusty Sand.
Rusty Sand?
Sam.
Sand. Rusty Sam. Okay. Name Rusty Sam.
You guys. Something.
Anything else?
I'm trying to think of something funny,
Go,
but
going once. Going
I mean,
twice.
there are some like famous pirate names like Blackbeard.
Blackbeard.
If we could play with that, maybe.
We do Greenbeard.
Greenbeard. That's
Oh,
a
yeah.
good one.
great, yeah.
Turtle beard or shell beard.
Shell beard.
Yeah, that's good.
What was the strength again? Sorry.
He has a good memory.
Good memory.
Okay.
That will definitely come in handy on our integrated learning adventure, I hope. Oh, I apologize. I forgot to pass these out. Guess we're gonna need these when we play.
No, you're good.
What was the name?
Thank you.
We go with Greenbeard
Green.
instead of Blackbeard.
Greenbeard's good.
Greenbeard is a pirate, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pirate
Look at
turtle.
that, right? A pirate turtle, rock on.
Beard.
Beard. Like,
Okay.
Green beer would be an Irish turtle pirate.
Just wanted to make sure.
Alright, and then on this character sheet, you have an opportunity to allow students to maybe write a little bit more about him. As a part of the World's XP, we also provide prompts to get to know your character a little bit more that can be done as homework or in class, depending on your content area. It could be something that
you have each kid has their own character, or like they work in groups.
each kid has their own character. Yeah.
But the whole class picks from those four.
There are hopefully when we get the funding for the art.
Yeah.
There should be a lot more than just four.
Okay.
Can't remember what number.
Is there an option for kids to draw as well, or
22.
do they have to use what's like in the...
Yeah, definitely. This is more like the idea with World's XP is to make it adaptable,
Got it.
right? So at least everything is there that you want to use, and then you can
Okay.
decide what
Take
things
it
you
out.
want to pull from. Right. So the XP is something they earn throughout the course of using World's XP. They can earn XP for highlighting positive behavior you want to see in class. Something I mentioned, as they level up, you can give them responsibilities in their classroom. They can choose from a list, like we have the door opener, the tech manager, things like that. these achievements are ways we can ask students to put more effort into their work, like through a reading achievement, or if you have like bonus math problems. Something I did, not here, but something I did in my university class was to allow students to earn extra knowledge points. There was a English language website they could go to and complete different problems and fixing grammar and things like that, choosing the right vocabulary. So different ways to earn achievements. You can highlight that student in class, like Susan earned achievement level 1, reading 1, and then earn extra XP. Something else with Worlds XP is they can use their XP to unlock items. It's important we don't take away the XP, but just once they reach a certain level, they're able to use a different item. And these items can be rewards, or they can be integrated in your learning adventure. One item that we used in Grace's class was the time machine. So she had the writing notebooks due every Monday, but if you use the time machine, you can turn in the notebook on Tuesday. Another example she used was future goggles. So as the writing log, they would have to read a book and write about what they read. Instead of reading a book, they could watch a Netflix TV show and write about what they read. So these are definitely adaptable. They can be changed to modify for your classroom. But I want to get into what we're going to work on for the rest of this discussion workshop are the integrated learning adventures. So I found this definition of role-playing games from medium.com, and it looks like it includes everything that should be in a role-playing game. Player controls a specific character. So we have Greenbeard, right? That's our character. The character has game statistics and or relational attributes with other game objects. So Worlds XP doesn't necessarily include this aspect of it. Your XP doesn't have to influence things you can do in the game. But again, there are options for doing that. The character has an important fictional narrative, relationships with other story elements. We have our background of who we are. It's very fitting because we're going to be on an island today. And the player makes decisions for the character. So we're going to step into the role today and play as Greenbeard. Now, the integrated learning adventures.
That citation, Living
Yeah.
in 2017, can you send that to me?
Yeah,
I don't know what that is, and I'm
it's
keen
from-
to see it.
So I think I just did a quick Google search. And,
Yeah.
what is an RPG, I think?
Really?
And
Okay.
it's Medium, but the article is really great too because he talks about what they are and how they are RPG games.
Yeah.
And goes through like video games and tabletop games.
Nice.
Really cool. So the integrated learning adventures contains the 3 aspects that I talked about. There's the optional one where you could kind of use the XP as a way to interact with the story, use the items to interact with the story. But to make it simple, we don't want to do that with getting started. And then we use integrated learning outcomes or informal assessments as a part of the adventure. Okay, so we're going to actually play that today. Oopsies. So bear with me, this is my first time DMing for adults.
Really?
So, yes.
Really? Oh.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh no, we saw the end. Or potentially. All right. I need to grab my other. Oh, they fell out. Okay. So actually, I'm going to grab this before we get started. Need these for the game.
They fell out of the folders. Yeah.
Dungeon mastering.
I was thinking direct message.
Yeah. In
Yeah.
we define all of those terms differently.
Oh.
I usually use the term game mastering.
Yeah,
Game
Because
master.
dungeon mastering is sort of associated with Dungeons and Dragons,
Yeah.
but game mastering is just you're the guy
Running the game.
running the.
So we are Greenbeard, or you are Greenbeard, and we're we've been told of this very amazing treasure that helps us manage our Uber driving a lot more efficiently, and we don't have to really worry too much. We make money quicker. So it's a device that speeds up our Uber car that works on water too
You
now.
guys said Uber driver, right?
Yeah.
Slash pilot. That's what I put up there.
I'm
So-
imagining like the car that becomes a submarine from The Spy Who Loved Me. Like the old,
Oh, yeah.
like a James Bond kind of thing is kind of where my head is.
Alright.
That's a
We can go
5-star
with
Uber
that.
driver, right?
That's right, yeah, that's what is that, Uber?
Uber Black.
Uber Max.
Uber submersible.
Yeah.
So we've heard about these rumors of a treasure that's really going to transform our Uber vehicle. And we pull up to this island, and as we get closer, we kind of notice that it's not necessarily deserted. It doesn't look like there's a lot of people that necessarily use this island, but it looks like there's a little bit piece of a boat shipwreck around the island. As we get closer, you notice there are some footsteps or footprints. And it's not just one, it looks like several. And you get up to the island and you come with a choice to explore the island. And you're really wondering where this treasure could be. And you decide which direction you want to head.
South is back the way we came, back to the ocean, right?
Yes. Well, it's the south part of the island though.
Oh, which part of the island we're looking at?
Yeah.
It's like a bird's eye view.
Yeah, right.
I'll start at 12 o'clock and go around the horn, right? Whenever you're in a dungeon, the first rule of dungeoning, always turn right.
Always turn right. And keep turning right.
Keep turning right until you can't turn right?
So we want to start in the north?
Otherwise, the moment you turn left, the Hansel and Gretel's witch.
You're
is
done.
Yeah, wherever you turn left, that's the witch, right? No? This is my
I don't really-
experience of dungeoning. I can't speak for anyone else.
Yeah. I just keep my hand on the wall and
That's right.
it'll come out eventually.
Yeah, let's go north.
North, alright. So as you approach the north side of the island, you don't see a lot happening. Kind of see some really heavy waves rushing in. You see a bigger kind of rock on the island. It doesn't look like there are many or any footsteps at all over here. What do you decide to do?
So, am I seeing that that kind of like hut? And
Here?
no,
No.
to the right.
No, sorry, this is
The-
just stock art that just came
Got
in.
it.
So that structure isn't there.
Yeah, right.
Pretend that's a
the
It's a mirage.
yeah.
I would go to the top of that rock and get a good view.
Yeah, get a better view, right?
Okay, you climb up to the top of the rock. It's a little wet, so you might have to roll a die to see if you can make it without slipping. I was trying to get this die app to work.
I can't believe I didn't bring my D20.
Yeah, I have.
Was
Shameful.
game conference? What
Shameful,
would
right, yeah,
think?
yeah.
We're gonna do this instead because I was having problems with the app. Rock, paper, scissors. If you beat
I
me,
wonder if I do have.
you make it up safely. Rock, paper, scissors.
Uh-oh.
I just held on that
eat
rock.
shit.
Now, if you were a proper player at this moment, Max, you would have said, rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock. Right? Don't allow 3 choices, make it 5. You got a better chance of winning.
So you start to climb up the rock and
It's a
you
critical fail.
grab up, and just as you reach up to the top, you let go and you fall down into the sand. You don't get hurt too bad, but you have a nice bruise on your bottom. So what do you do now?
Try one
Do
more
we
time.
try again?
Do we try again?
Yeah.
Okay, someone else has to do rock,
Alright,
paper, scissors.
go.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Alright, so you climb up to the top of the rock. You're able to kind of see.
Notice it was a rock, and he always.
Every
did.
day.
You did rock 3 times.
I want you to succeed. So you climb up to the rock and you kind of see some brushes pushed away, and they look like they're leading more towards the south of the island, almost directly at 12 o'clock. Don't really see much else.
Yeah. It is a challenge.
Mm.
We're a turtle. We could always just let's follow it.
Follow the path. Okay. So we're heading through the island to the south of the island. As we approach the south of the island, we notice a waterfall. Behind the waterfall, there is what looks like a broken mechanical boat. There are still pieces of the boat hanging on the wall. It kind of looks like it's out of place.
Definitely gonna go there.
Let's investigate.
So you approach the boat and you see some pieces of the boat that looks like they need to be put in place on the wall behind the waterfall. And it looks like these pieces have to do with game-based learning and gamification. And they need to be categorized or classified into their correct categories.
Or we're working as a group.
Yes, you can work as a
That's
group
us.
and place them as the correct.
We gotta come up with categories and then split them up.
You split
The
them up.
figures is just, yeah,
Oh.
these two
It looks
boards.
like on the wall there are two kind of separate places.
Uh-huh.
You want to draw a line, put like GBO and then GH and Y.
Oh, you're gonna put them up here?
Yes.
Gamification.
That's gamification. So gamification here, game-based learning is there. Airline frequent flyer miles. Game.
Non-game setting, maybe.
Roll a
This
die.
one could be, it could be both.
Yeah.
It depends on. It doesn't say.
Yeah. Roll.
I think it's more
It seems
gamification.
Okay.
Because inherently there's nothing learning about rolling the die. It's
Yeah.
just a way to throw in. And
Burning points spent for rewards. So, okay, this is the easy one. These are game-based. Evolution of board game, learning through play, gamification. Yeah.
That's the definition of gamification. No?
Is it? Yeah.
through play.
Yeah.
Grading with experience points. Gamification.
And then game-based learning? I think that's-
Yeah.
Game-based learning, yes, is using a specific game in the classroom, right?
And like using that for your whole semester to actually teach a learning thing. So like, in other words, instead of me grading the students throughout the semester, I'm actually just grading XP points. More than just like rolling the die at random, which is just like, that's gamification. I'm just like throwing in little bits of a game to make it fun. Versus like the whole curriculum is a game.
It is a game.
That's how I see it. So too.
Yeah, I think game based starts as a game. Like it's initially a game and then maybe
Like
you
the
add
whole
some-
thing is a game.
Yeah. And gamification starts as something that's not a game and you add.
You just like throw in fun tidbits.
One of the best ways that helped me kind of clarify, because I even had to ask and bounce the idea off her and make sure I was right about one. If we look at gamification as how it's taught, and then game-based learning as what is taught, is the, but I think one of those might be not the best for that classification.
Yeah, so I see this as, you know, instead of a grade, you're using experience points,
Yeah.
right?
That's game-based learning.
Well, I see that as gamification.
You see this?
Yeah.
I see that as
Doing, take this
gamification.
outside.
That's
Yeah.
yeah. So what's the third tile for?
Okay, well, what do you guys think?
So as you
Actually,
look,
this can be gamification too.
as you look closer to the wall, it looks like there are 5 missing pieces on
Each.
one part of the boat and 7 missing pieces
Oh,
on the
that's
other
it.
side of the boat.
Saying one is gonna be 5, one's gonna be 7.
Yes.
All right, so where are the 2 pieces of game elements and non-game? No.
And is this something you do with the kids? You would just switch the cards?
Yeah, so you could do any sort of classification that you're working on. For my background, English language learning, I might do like like verbs and adverbs, or
Yes, we have. I'm running about that.
even just putting
Some daily.
sentences in the correct structure, grammar structure.
Are these 4 correct?
Let's see. High risk.
Start with that.
Yes, there's just one that needs to go over here.
This one?
And it's a tricky one because I gave you a bad example.
This one?
I think this one.
Learning through play?
Learning through play.
These are all game-based learning?
Yes, those are all game-based learning, and then the others on the left are gamification. It's tough though, because I think that with language learning, almost any game you play or anything you do
I
is
think we're good.
learning, right? You're using
Yeah.
communication to learn.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's tough to like without more context because some could be both, right?
Right,
Without
yeah.
the full context.
Right, yeah.
So what would you do? You would put like verbs and adverbs?
Yeah,
Two categories?
yeah.
Okay. And you would have each student do this?
It would be done in like groups where I would give 2 to one group, 2 to another group, 2 to another group.
And they each have to quickly just go?
Yeah, and in Worlds XP, how I've give some suggestions for running RPGs in small groups where there's like the captain who decides for their group what they do after a short discussion, and then you kind of vote as a class. There are a couple other different ones.
And the kids mark down on their own immediate like chart that they got XP from playing that game?
Yeah, so the XP is earned for like positive behavior. So if you completed this correctly, I might give that entire group 10 XP each. Or if you're working silently in class and one group's doing really well, I might give that whole group 10 XP to like highlight that behavior that I want to see in the class. Or if you just volunteer and answer a question, you might earn XP. It's up to you as a teacher to decide what constitutes earning the XP in class. Alright, so as you put the boat back into a piece and you notice there's a large rudder coming out of the bottom of the boat.
It's a good sign. It's seaworthy.
Check it out.
So you look at the rudder and it looks like it has some sort of mechanism that you can push.
Like an explosive button.
So you push it.
Yeah.
Okay, as you push it, you hear some very loud noises coming from what sounds like underneath the island, and it sounds like it's coming. The noise is working its way up towards where you guys are standing, and you see this passageway open up in the island, and you look down and you see a very dim light, but it looks like it's down a bit of ways.
Have you played Seventh Continent since we spoke last?
No.
Really?
Am I like taking something from that game?
You're definitely, there's something quite similar to the way that the story rolls out.
Okay.
To what you're, yeah, in a good way.
We found a secret passageway.
Ooh.
It was under the boat. Nice. Okay. So
Down we go, I guess.
Is there a flashlight on the boat we could take with us?
No.
Okay.
You go down.
50 feet of
So
rope.
we have turtle vision.
Oh, yeah.
So-
So we like roll down?
As you go down.
Well, I forgot
Yeah,
what
because
the
you
game
could
was.
roll down.
Is it Mario or the turtles like roll? Like spin around?
The
Yeah.
shells.
The shell,
Yeah.
turtle
Yeah.
shell. So as you go down, you notice the light, and it looks like it gets more prominent right as you get closer. It looks like the stairs kind of open up into this room. It looks like someone had been working there. There's an empty like Coke bottle lying around, some paper and parchment, and it looks like there's this device that looks like it might be able to be modified for our Uber car.
We're definitely gonna grab that and run out.
Oh, yeah.
So as you grab the device, you hear a door shut behind you. And you hear someone shout, see if I can try my pirate voice, "Stay away from me, treasure!"
All right, get your hands off me, treasure.
And so now you're in a room and there's some light. You notice a few things lying around. You remember the Coke bottle, piece of paper, the pen, the quilt pen, and you also notice a bit of light coming from like a corner part of the island.
Everybody roll for initiative.
That's right. No way out, except through him.
Maybe.
Do we have our cutlass? Did we put that on?
You say like reasonable game, you just say sorry
Yeah,
and
that
that's it. Or negotiate to get
That's right.
something.
Okay. Can you quickly write a note and put it in the bottle? And it's a message in the bottle to call for help.
That's perfect. Yeah. So
Okay.
you examine this bottle, and it looks like you could have enough ink to write a short message. And you notice the light that's coming out. You can look through it, and it looks like it leads to the ocean. And this is kind of where you end the RPG, where you could have your students either decipher a math problem, a long math problem. What my wife and I did for English language learning, we were studying introduction paragraphs, and we asked them to write an introductory paragraph on why they should be rescued. So they had to introduce like the background information, the thesis statement, the hook, thesis statement, a bit of background information as to where they are.
You could also have students write a short sort of descriptor about how they get out,
Right.
right? If you wanted to be a little bit more creative, right?
Yeah. Right.
Using each of the objects in the room, how do you defeat the pirate? Right?
Yeah.
Like I would make the paper into a paper airplane to distract him. Take the bottle and make a spin the bottle game like Death in the Seventh Seal, right? I challenge you, pirate, to a game. The reward? My device. That's my device. No, it's not. I just finders keepers, right? That kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Perfect.
Particularly, that might be good early because you get a sense of whether your students are coming to you from a really creative headspace or whether they're more literal.
Mhm.
Right. So, oh, okay. So I got a lot of literalists. All right. So I got to step them into a more creative solution, or these guys are going to go crazy. So I can go crazy, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because from the narrative, it might seem that like asking for help will take too long, right? If there's no
Mhm.
one on the island potentially, until someone comes for the rescue, it might take too long.
Yeah. As a GM, you can kind of decide what the pirate does, right? You can say that no one's around, and they're stuck going towards that bottle pen solution, or we could do it, play with it where.
I mean, that's your roll for initiative point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you act first or does the pirate, right? You haven't touched his stuff yet. What? Hey, pirate, what the hell are you getting all up in my grill for? I'm just hanging out. I haven't touched anything yet. You tricksy kids, right? You know, Scooby-Dooing, right?
Yeah. So what we have for the last 20 minutes, that's good for kind of talking about this. On the handout, there are what I
Yeah, 10, right?
took from Jane McGonigal, her book Reality is Broken. She talks about how she outlines an adventure through including 4 main parts. A goal, right? Our goal was to get the treasure to help our Uber driving. Why the goal matters, well, then we can make more money if we have this, and we can improve our vehicle. Step-by-step instructions. Well, we arrived at the island, and then we had a direction to go. We had found the device. Okay, now we need to kind of escape. Proof of completion when we have our device. This part of the scenario 2 is a way to transition into something else. If you have them write in a message in a bottle, next class someone comes and rescues them, and that's where you can kind of continue the scenario 2.
We've got a rival team of adventurers. You know, you dispatch the pirate, and now 2 groups of students in class both want the same thing, right? Right. Or you make yourself the pirate, and 2 groups of students trying to defeat you, right? If your class is really good, they could handle competing with each other. Put them in the Blood Bowl, right? But if they can't do that, then align both teams against you, and then it's even more satisfying when they defeat you,
Yeah.
right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Depends on the kids, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing too, is you have to know your students a little bit, and
Yeah.
through this playing you kind of get to know your students a little more.
Yeah. Well, the act of playing helps with that, right? Because you really get to see what, you know, once they're in a kind of game frame, a lot of the hang-ups about being a student will kind of naturally give way, and they'll be in a game frame. Their gaming hang-ups will come in, but that's okay, right? Because what you care about is what are the learning hang-ups. I want to get rid of those so that you can lean into the hard stuff in a way that if you get hung up on, you don't then think about that you're stupid or I can't do this because I'm a girl or whatever, right? You want to get rid of that stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then kind of in each discipline, what are you trying to draw away, right? You teach Jewish studies?
I teach science.
You teach science,
I teach
okay.
science.
So you think about the granular complexity of your disciplines, right? I mean, which sciences do you teach? All of them,
Earth science, biology,
Yeah.
computer science, physics.
right? Earth science is something they often encounter for the first time in middle school, right? So the terms and the concepts are totally new and they're abstract, right? So on an island, well, if the island itself has 15 of the things, and those things have to be used in a certain way to solve a puzzle, well, at the end of that, they're gonna know those things, right? What's a caldera or whatever, right? The caldera on a mesa, right?
We can have to
Right.
put them in the right order as their map to get to the treasure or something. To
Yeah,
go through
and-
the proper structures of the island.
Exactly. Or they've got a treasure map. The first thing they get is a treasure map that has been cut into multiple pieces. So the island doesn't make sense, but geological forms work based on core principles. If they know the principles, they should be able to reassemble the island. If they can do that, then they can find the treasure. If not, then the map will get them all screwed up, right? Something like that, maybe.
That's good.
The trick in the work is how do you see your own discipline in it, right? Sometimes it feels so natural. Narrativist games, okay, use them in a literature class, use them in a history class, but that stuff is all there in science or math, Jewish studies, PE, every language, right? Give them, they're in French 3, give them a map that is coded with French 4's grammar. You know enough to know that you don't quite get it, so you have to step up, figure out how you're gonna step up, right? Right, or it's not, I had this experience as a graduate student. We had to, each week in one of the classes I was in, we had to become experts in one very obscure thing in ancient history. Very obscure, okay? And one of the, and you just literally drew it out of a hat. One of the topics that I drew, all of the scholarship was in Italian. All of it. Now, mind you, I can speak English all right. I could read German. I could read French. I could read Latin. No Italian, none. Sorry, kid, you got a week. Figure it out. Okay, I figured it out, right? This was before Google Translate, right? This was, the days of the clay tablets, right? But you figure it out. Give them something like that, right? Give them a map. It's a French class. Give them a map in Esperanto. Esperanto is a Romance-based artificial language. Should be easy enough to figure it out. The words will be similar, right? Oh, and then set a clock because it's a tidal wave coming.
Yeah, it has to be challenging.
Right?
So that
Pressure.
Game
right.
challenging,
game challenge.
right?
Challenging but
Yeah.
doable.
Yeah. And that's kind of the trick in this kind of work is how do you get it just hard enough,
Right.
right?
Spot.
Right, that flow state,
Yeah.
right? And when I was talking in there about missing, right? That's how you're gonna miss. You're gonna miss because it's gonna be too easy or too hard, right? You're not gonna miss in the trying or in the design. It'll just be like, oh God, Les, I thought they were here. And this was like Candyland. Oh, damn it. Right? All right. Next year, it isn't. It's good stuff, man.
You mentioned the timer. If you would have went to this side, some quicksand,
Uh-huh.
and you got to give me the definition of gamification to
To get out.
get
Oh,
out
no.
of quicksand. See, I'm
Was that the
60
south,
seconds.
the west side?
It's one of the east or west, yeah.
And
Yeah.
when quicksand
exactly.
hits the end,
You know,
are we done?
There's an Alexa.
That's a good question. Hope they don't get there.
Time
No,
on
yeah,
the
I
clock. You can just tell Alexa to
don't
set
like to
45
kill off their
minutes right
characters.
after
We never
the
did
call.
when
Like
we
in our
had like,
pictures.
Oh, death is
Yeah.
so important.
Yes.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah. I think you could,
From my experience, when a character was at the brink of death or dying, I would ask another character if they would be willing to help out that character. Because I had some wizards and mages that had extra powers and they could roll to help their companion. So we were trying not to kill anyone off, or they'd somehow be able to come back.
As a part of your book that I really liked is that you talk about how games allow you to fail over and over
Yeah.
through
Mhm.
death, which
Mhm.
when you say it out loud sounds terrible, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh wait, but you know, if I have infinite lives, it actually allows me
Yeah.
to fail and it's
Right.
fine.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can just start over.
Right. The boss doesn't need you to kill him at 10.
Yeah.
11 o'clock is just as good,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And, you know, if the kids are young, or if some death would freak them out, because they're gonna have a resurrection mechanic, obviously, right?
Right.
Then you just say you're exhausted.
Go
or
to sleep,
Yeah, you
Yeah.
hibernate.
You get knocked out, you go to sleep, you hibernate, right? Something like that, right? You have a mechanic that takes you out of the game experience for a certain predetermined amount of time, at which you can come back in, right? I'm heartless, so I just call it, yeah, you died. You're running back to your body, like, and half the kids playing are gonna be playing games where that happens all the time.
Yeah.
And a quarter of them are gonna be grateful that they can resurrect. Because if they play these really hardcore games,
Dark Souls.
Dark Souls, right? Or the new one whose name eludes me, but it's from the same guys who did Dark Souls, is even harder.
Bloodborne.
There you go.
Bloodborne.
What's the-
Yeah.
What's the shooting game that kids want for that? You jump out of the bus.
Fortnite.
Fortnite.
So Fortnite, you get out, you can't get back in until, like, you could play
Oh,
again,
yeah,
but you don't have
Fortnite's
that game.
tough.
Full,
Right.
yeah,
So it's
full
like
game.
Because if you
Yeah.
die early
Use
on,
that
then you have to
round.
Just
reload
You're
into a
out.
new
Yeah.
game, and that's like 5 minutes that you have to wait to get back in.
Patience.
Yeah, Fortnite is a great model for, more like a Smash Mouth kind of gamification, right? Because, it's a battle arena.
Yeah.
You're in, and if you're incompetent, you're done. I mean, I'm hopeless at Fortnite, right? It's like, I didn't die first, winning. Right? What's great about that is that you can win by building, or being a great marksman, or some combination of the both, right? You probably can't win unless you're decent at both things, right? So think about skills of yours in your class that are on a binary that you could do like that, and you use the Fortnite model, and you do it for 6 minutes in class, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So it becomes a sort of fun, quick and done,
Back
you
on the way
know?
out.
Yeah. I have a session next, so I'm gonna step
Yeah,
out.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
You want to do?
Nice.
I'll let you, John. So John is one of
Can you take another one? I don't have the
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
Has a book on gamifying the classroom. And Sam came on as our robotics coach. She's a mechanic and has a graduate degree in engineering. And she's like the first really good robotics coach we've had.
Rock
And
on.
now we're using her for calculus
course.
and math.
Yep.
And middle school deep dive about two-stroke engines.
Yep.
So
Oh,
middle
actually,
school-
we're doing
nice.
Our middle schoolers design their own second semester classes.
Nice.
And so they designed a class about two-stroke engines. And she's gonna bring in thermodynamics and chemistry of the combustion reaction and whatever.
I figured it'd be better to introduce those principles early on, so that if they decide they want to go into engineering, it's not gonna be like, oh no, what do you mean things don't get hot, they lose heat, because energy is always
Right.
leaving the system.
Right, right. Neat.
I don't
Two-stroke
really-
engines, that's a Trabant, isn't it? The East German Trabant, isn't that the?
It is, but that's way above my pay grade. We're going to, I'm
Simple
looking at
stuff.
I'm looking at like dirt bikes and stuff.
Nice.
Maybe that, because we're moving
You want this
what's it
one?
called, the dune buggy go-kart thing that we never got working quite. And it has kind of a lawnmower type engine that we're supposed to,
Yeah, you guys
we need
are-
to see that.
You guys are
Thank you.
modeling out.
Thank you, sir.
Maybe
That's great.
schools should get that thing going.
Yeah, I have one next, and then I have another one at the end.
Miles doesn't want it in his garage anymore, so we're moving it to my garage.
Max, you ready?
I think so.
But I'd be
Sweet.
happy to
You
take
guys
it.
together or something?
No, no, Max is doing his own.
You did Greece? What do you-
Yeah, I'm doing it session 3.
Greece?
Yeah. Up against Tracy though.
Yeah.
And you don't have any
Yeah.
trouble. I only needed you for your keys.
Let's
But
see.
This is such cool stuff. that-
What's Tracy?
Sorry.
Athens, right?
Yeah, I wasn't there. She's doing global game for global studies.
Yeah, no, I realized yesterday.
Is that the one they talked about on the podcast?
Yeah.
Stayed really late
Yeah.
yesterday.
I used her,
You definitely put in your time.
she talked about the
Wait,
presentation
so-
software. They went to the presentation that
If
was,
you want to hang around for
she
one
uses
of
like
these sessions.
Prezi.com
Oh,
and
yeah.
it turned out to be amazing.
Oh,
So
really?
I immediately started using that as
Yeah,
well.
Prezi's good.
I use it for all that stuff.
Really? Yeah, I'd never heard of it.
Pick a, well, pick a
I love
subject.
that.
So we're,
Like I
right
teach science,
here.
I could have a whole bunch of
And
ideas,
so let's see.
but then when kids ask
Probably
questions,
the
I can
transforming
easily
students into
go in the
state
order they
leaders
want.
games.
I did like just
Right
regular
here.
PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Maybe hang, that's one I'm
Take
going
turns
after.
when they go find it here, the kids
Yeah.
could see like,
I
there's all the things we wanna talk about.
I'll get you,
Just zoom in
your
and
own
zoom
thing.
in.
There's coffee.
Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, watch it.
Actually, I think I might
Lounge.
take some coffee.
Yeah, it's cool. I didn't know
I'll check
that.
on the internet situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the, can you spitball the Greece thing?
Yeah, so it's
I was debating between the three of you, you all have good ones.
so ancient. So it's basically, I love ancient Greece because it's like classical Greece is 100 150 years, so it's relatively short, very small in terms of geographic scope. So you can really deep dive into it, and it's also simple, right? It's the ancient world. It's not ExxonMobil and the modern economy. So all the concepts are relatively simple, and I like it as an introduction to the social sciences. And so what it is two sets of gamification.